Okay, thank you so much. I really enjoyed, I think, Bruno's contribution. I learned a lot of new concepts, and I liked other more notions that I'm so involved into, like coloniality. And I'm going to talk about something similar that the scholar I'm going to refer to has or did theorized back in the 20th century. So the day I received Jeremiah's email, I immediately thought of Edward Said as one of the prominent Arab thinkers who fall perfectly into what Jeremiah wanted us to talk about. But then I thought of most Edward Said's works as a critique of the Orientalists rather than helping the Orientalists understand the Orientalized. And then, as an Algerian intellectual, I thought of Malik Bennabi. I don't know whether you know the scholar or not, but most of people here, intellectuals, are not familiar with his works, though his works are really so important to understand the uh, the human being, the individual of the Arab world, of the Muslim world, after the modernity has reached our region. I mean, it's quite specific to speak about the Middle East, the MENA region, Middle East and North Africa, the same as you speak about Europe, or you refer to the same notions of critical theory as a Eurocentric theory to refer to things that are really specific religiously, culturally, and politically, that are really particular to that region, that particular place of the world. I mean, it's really not Latin America, it's not Europe, it's not Russia or Eastern Europe, and it's not Asia. It's the Middle East. Right. To start with, I'm going to introduce Benabi as a one who is francophone at the beginning, who was francophone. So his mother tongue was not classical Arabic. He was francophone and rather francophile. He went to Paris and learned about the culture of France, that is the Western culture, and he adopted a lot of his ideas. At the age of 50 years old, he came back to Algeria and discovered that he needed to learn his mother tongue or Algerian Arabic and more classical Arabic so that he understands both his the citizens in Algeria at that time, the 20th century, and to know why they are ready to be colonized. So Malik Ben Nabi, to introduce this scholar, is a prominent Algerian thinker and scholar of the 20th century. So it's a bit old, but then still relevant. One of the most intriguing elements of Banabi's approach to civilization, to understand civilization, is that civilization is governed by internal, external, on the one hand, and social, intellectual factors on the other hand. And that an interesting equation theorized by Malik Banabi, which is man plus soil plus time, this is what makes civilization, and of which religion, according to Benabi, forms the all-important catalyst, is explained and its significance in terms of the reversal of Muslim decline is evaluated and was evaluated. That's the point. Now, for the Western world, religion does not have an important role. As for the Middle East, whether Christianity or Islam, it's really at the core of every behavior of individuals, of every decisions we make. So it's at the very center. So what is clearly apparent is that for Benabi, man with capital M is the central force in any civilizing process. And without him with capital H, the other two elements are of no value. Also, most of Benabi's research and works unravel the causes of Muslim decline and the success of Western civilization and culture. So it's not like Edward Said trying to criticize the West for misunderstanding the Orient, or telling that we do have our culture and civilization. For Benabi, he admitted that there was a decline in the Islamic civilization and the Arab culture. Bennabi is considered by many critics and scholars in social sciences as the first social philosopher and social scientist since Ibn Khaldun. I don't know whether you know Ibn Khaldun and his introduction, his famous work, Introduction of Ibn Khaldun. So another prominent Muslim scholar was Ibn Khaldun. In his works, Bennabi kept on searching for universal laws and fundamental principles that govern human societies and civilizations and determine their destiny in history. His concern about the decline of Muslim civilization led him to analyze its causes and provide solutions. What was unique, or what is unique in Bennabi's approach and analysis is that instead of addressing the dilemma with economics and politics and ideology, he rather emphasized the role of ideas as a catalyst for the growth of civilization. I'll give you just an example. In the Arab Spring, as well as the recent people's movement that are taking place in Algeria since the 22nd of February and are still happening every Friday, people are following ideas. I give you in Arabic the word and then I translate. For instance, يسقط النظام. The system must fall. In case of Egyptian Arab Spring or Tunisian Arab Spring. So the idea is there, and then people follow that idea and construct their decisions or construct their behavior according to that idea. In fact, the study of civilizations and global change continues to feature prominently in academic circles. And many researchers and scholars in the West and the Arab Muslim world have recently called for the review of works of leading civilizationists, and Bennabi was among the most prominent scholars to review their works. Malik Bennabi's philosophy is an integrated system of interpretations based on a deep understanding of Islam. His approach to the study of civilization and its course in history helps diagnose the Muslim civilizational crisis and explains its origin and solutions. What is indeed quite specific in Bennabi's philosophy is that he had got a scientific training combined with a historical, sociological, and philosophical outlook that did enable him to analyze European civilization and therefore generate original thoughts and analysis of the Muslim world's strengths and weaknesses. The fact that he grew up in France for more than 10 years and being Francophile and then coming back to Algeria, he mingled the two extremes. I mean, being Western and being Muslim at the same time. That's where comes the hybrid type of scholars Bennabi is. As for Bennabi's perception and view of civilization as a key concept in sociology, his definitions of the word were varied. He recognized that civilization activates social capacities to face crucial problems of a given society, and he indicates that the balance, the moral and material aspects in human life. Since society justifies human activities in the realm of history, society is the core force in any civilizing process. So Nabi asserted in his book, The Conditions of a Renaissance, and you can find it in Arabic as Shurut al-Nahda, that moral factors and material factors are crucial to create balance and liveliness in human society and generate solidarity and unity. He defined civilization via its structure and social essence. Bennabi argued that all objects or things a human do produce result from man, that is al-insan in Arabic, soil, turab in Arabic, and time, waqt in Arabic. In Bennabi's formula that I have mentioned a few seconds ago, man is the primary device of civilization and the central force in any civilizing process. In addition, Bennabi discussed the origin and nature of the society's realms, where the component of any action belongs to one of the following categories, either objects, persons, or ideas. To explain, applying the mechanism of synthesis to these elements demonstrates that all actions, activities, and deeds are the sum of men, the people, plus the sum of materials and instruments, and the sum of ideas behind these actions. According to Bennabi again, the realm of ideas consists of impressed ideas derived from sacred or secular sources, particularly for the Muslim world. So we just derive our decisions from the Quran, from the Sunnah, that is the Prophet's tradition. In Muslim civilization, impressed ideas, as I said, are derived from the Quran, that is the sacred book of Muslims, and the Sunnah, that is the sacred book of the Prophet. Another point, Malik Bennabian looked at culture as a social psychologist who knew the secret of the human psyches, which inevitably affected by the social environment in which it exists. So it's so particular to speak about the Arab world, to refer to their history, to their culture, to their religion, and not to apply the critical theory that is coming from the Western civilization that is completely historically different, religiously different, and apply it to understand different individuals with different backgrounds. This environment is only an actual embodiment of an integrated system of cultural values which together constitute the desired educational model for both the individual and the community. Every social relationship is essentially a cultural value represented by the moral and aesthetic taste of society. I mean, Bennabian is ranked among the very few who have profoundly and systematically contributed to the debate concerning the issue of development and decline. I mean, why we don't develop like the Western civilization, why we keep on declining, why we keep on living in the same boiling area, always with battles, always with conflicts. Sometimes are sectarial conflicts, sometimes are religious conflicts or ideological conflicts. For Bennabian, it's the problem of not understanding each other or just sticking to one particular ideology and idea. If you refer to, for instance, different not ethnic groups, but different groups in Algeria. So we have those who refer to themselves as Arabs. There are those who refer to themselves as Amazigh. The idea behind these two categorization is that I speak in a different dialect, then I belong to a different group, then I have a different space. And for Bennabian, it's the motor here is the idea. What do we believe in? Right? So I think I have come to the end of my contribution. I don't know if I'm just on time or not. So thank you for having listened to my contribution.
Thank you for all of you. Thank you, Jeremiah, for this connection too, to meet people that are close to me, like Bruno, but I didn't know him until now, and
Thank you.
Dala, yeah, to
Yeah,
know
that's right.
you too. And this is not a piece of work of about an author, but a lot of ideas, maybe confusing ideas, that I am working on critical theory from the perspective of Americas. Okay, and it's a part of the work I am doing with people from a project called Extimacies, and it's a kind of extimacy is a concept of Lacanian concept that makes the intimacy of the people, the relation between the more inner aspects of the subjects, for example, and actually the intimacy is part of the otherness too. How the otherness is related to our subjectivities. And one aspect that I am working about is the aspect of violence. I am working on this from Marcuse perspectives, but I would like to present to you today some theses of this relation and why I'm working violence as mainly aspect of this work. I make a text, but I will try to read some aspects of these texts. It's a text inspired in Benjamin's work, Benjamin's thesis on history, and I called this thesis on critical theory in the Americas. And the first thesis is about violence. Why violence is the main aspect. And I remember here a phrase that is repeated in Brazil two times for two different governors in São Paulo, that is the province where I live, who did not react is alive. One of these times was said by a governor in 2012. The victim. It's about people that were killed by police force. 9 people. The victims were quote unquote suspects of a crime in the periphery. The killers do not get trial. On the contrary, uh, and the victims were returning just to work as a normal working day. Another moment of this phrase was in 2017 when police forces in the state of São Paulo too killed almost 500 people. And the governor said the same phrase, who did not react is alive. Uh, it's a part of a repetition of massacres against people in periphery that appears in Brazil, especially here in São Paulo. And it makes me think about a local question on critical theory. If critical theory departs in the question of what is enlightenment, like Kantian questions, maybe we can think here about where is the enlightenment. Our documents of barbarism are our documents of civilization. They were writing in the blood of the open veins of Latin America. And I think about this image, Benjamin's image of chess game, and here I will describe a little. The chess game of the historical materialism has other pawns in the Americas. Native people, black slavers, and poor white immigrants are moved in a singular chessboard. The little hunchback, expert chess player, presents difficulties to understand how to play it. Players change the rules every single crisis of capitalism. Sometimes one of them lost her mind and turned the tables. Most of these times it means coup of état or another perverse moment like this. Another thesis is about the public sphere. The public sphere in Americas is not an ancient Greek agora where the subjects act in a communicative way. Maybe colonized civilizations have only marketplaces as the room where everyone can present oneself to others. We live without dissimulations here. Many nations in South America preserve the commodities in their name. Brazil received the name of the tree called Pau Brasil. Argentina because of the silver. For sure, native names are rare in this case. Paraguay and Mexico are one of these cases. Haiti is the principal example where the most important commodity for the modernity take voice, slavery. Because of their revolts, these countries are exemplary devastated by imperial forces with health of neighborhoods until now. How the subjects can express and demand for recognition beyond the commodification. The grammar of intersubjective relations in America is codified by structural injustices beyond recognition. Then the paradigm of normative critical theory in the Americas seems limited. Normativity presupposes, I quote Habermas here, that subjects acting communicatively always come to an understanding in the horizon of a life world. However, uh, I, I, end of quote. However, the subjects in the Americas has been subject to commodities relations. What is the life world of the commodities? Whenever social groups rebels for their lives beyond commodity form, dominant forces express their surplus repressive status. It demands another critical thinking beyond normative paradigms. a critical theory on the social suffering. Uh, I quote Marcuse, and he says that civilization is transforming the earth into hell. And that this reflection places the social suffering in a geopolitical way. It drives critical theory to another direction, a radical one. The normative critical theory conceives suffering as a pathological question. Although it allows detect important aspects of diagnosis of present time, normative glasses for pathological problems lacks focus. The binomial structure between norms and pathologies makes critical theory produces particular diagnosis as an abstract universal truth. It's a consequence of the non-dialectical relation preserved by categorical imperatives of illusory correspondence between norm and pathological detour. Nevertheless, Marcuse's suffering expresses historical dialectics as the uncompromising insistence of Freudian theory, I quote Marcuse, on showing up the repressive content of the highest values and achievement of culture, end of quote. Suffering is the ambiguity of the contradictory relation between civilization and barbarism, in which civilized acts perpetuate barbaric consequences. Because of this connection, the oppressed subjects avoid the so-called universal norms of the particular status quo. As part of the rational discourses of civilization, normative diagnosis eludes its own barbaric basis many times. Therefore, oppressed suffers in a silent way as well as reproduces its daily experience of violence. In front of the social suffering, critical theorists in the Americas, I can call here Paulo Freire, like Bruno said, faces the sphinx of their constitutive contradictions. How to constitute a critic from the hell? As Marx said, I will split this part. Uh, and the other one here. Okay, hey. Uh, some of the examples that I split here are making relations between critical theory, between the slavers, peoples, and the master, the dialectics of master and the slave, in as a constitutive social forces in Brazil, and I can return to this. But I'd like to think more about this connection here. Uh, there, there is diagnosis of the present, and they are open to a critique of reason under the subaltern perspective. There is a geopolitics of the relation between center and periphery that makes critical theory to meet historical materials sometimes hidden under European paradigms. However, as a dialectical question in times of decolonial theories, it is necessary to question, where is the periphery? Where is the center? Does such division make any sense now? The first volume of Marx's Capital ends with a reflection on colonialism as a category of capitalism. This chapter follows Marx's description of primitive accumulation, the first step in the direction of a more dominant way for capitalism to abstract social relations into commodity exchange. Colonialism represents a special chapter of the internal struggles of capitalism in regard to its domination of the labor force, property, and so on. According to Marx, modern colonial system directly exposes social antagonisms within capitalism. In this context, Marx's words on the work of Edward Gibbon Wakefield, a theorist of modern colonialism, are worth repeating. The great merit of this author is, I quote Marx, to have discovered not something new about the colonies, but in the colonies, the truth about capitalist relations in the mother country, end of quote. In fact, the center-periphery relation as a division between two parts reveals as another theoretical absurd. They are juxtaposed parts rather than extremes in a subaltern division. As a consequence of decolonized dialects, center and periphery are elements of an estimate relation. Uh, the center is the other of the periphery and vice versa. However, that is one relation, that's one center, for example, is the other, the periphery, created inside each other, like the center created the periphery and the periphery created the center. In the other words, there is a center by the peripheral perspective, as well as there is a periphery by the perspective of the center. They are in an intertwined relation, as well as they are strangers to each other. Finally, it allows to understand how center becomes understandable by the periphery and vice versa. It does not mean that power is equally distributed between the parts. On the contrary, the center has become itself more and more centralized and its other peripheral as a more distant extreme. The center is no longer able to see itself in the mirror of its peripheries, and the periphery sees itself in a more distorted way, considering its real dependence as a possible freedom in an apparent world without alternatives. The center-periphery question challenges critical theory to change some of its terms. Since then, critical theory is territorialized context too. And the territory does not mean a particular place. Territory means geopolitical history. The time is running among ruins. That is, I think critical theory, like where is enlightenment, as a question of territorial questions. I split here and uh, I'm going here to the end, the last end. Um, the question of progress and regression. Uh, we need to think about it, like Amy Allen said sometimes, and I would like to finish these questions about violence and regression. On the other hand, what it means is relation, huh? Progress and regression. On the one hand, it means that progress is related to violence forces of the status quo, a regressive force of the pure aggression. And on the other hand, such a return of the repressed, when we return to, and this history repeats every time in souls of global souls, uh, such a return of the repressed means a history without end. Here we can remember our first thesis on the violence represented by the massacres in Brazil, but also another murdering of Marielle Franco and another political militants. In this sense, regression is recovering their voices and the struggles. Who did not react is alive. It's a false thinking. On the contrary, we can remember an important motto perpetrated by the Brazilian social movement called Mothers of May. That is a movement created by mothers who lost their sons and daughters killed by the police forces. It was almost 500 Jido people between May 12 and 21 of 2006. Such families face the state. Facing the force of the states, mothers of May go forward. They will be not silenced because they know that, I quote then, our dead people have a voice. Maybe it's a specter who is haunting not only Europe, but all the capitalist system. Such a voice is not an enlightened one. Most of the times, it's a noise without meaning for the ears trained by normative critique. However, it's a voice materialized by the form, when the body's in the middle of the streets walking among ruins. Would critical theory be able to absorb such movements? That's the end.